This is a huge lot of HO scale trains that I just got for free the other day, and today I'm going to go through all of it. So let's just get straight into it. I'll start with the box that is the most obvious on the top. This is just a Bachmann Easy Track expansion pack of some sort. It's got track in here. It's nothing special, but it's just Bachmann Easy Track. Next up, we have this lifelike auto rack with some Chevy citations. And just of note, I'm going to be opening up everything after this. This is just a very brief overview of it all. Next up, in this Bachmann box, it says it's a Bachmann Niagara, but it isn't. Got it the wrong way. This is a Bachmann Hogwarts Express engine. Next up, we have the first of many train sets. This one is a lifelike Golden Eagle, which has one of these weird lifelike Union Pacific F40s, which I've had a few of these before. Next up, as you can see here, is another very large lifelike train set. This one's a Golden Flyer, and I'm just going to move this out of the way because this is a huge box, if you couldn't tell. Next up is yet another train set. This one is more Hogwarts Express, so I guess I've got 2 engines and 2 cars. Now, there's still 4 more sets left, one of which is a set that I've actually got the older version of, and I believe this is the newer one. This is a Bachmann John Bull set, so this might end up replacing my other one. And then we've got 2 more very similar sets to this. First up is a Bachmann Lafayette, which is kind of interesting. I've seen these before, but I haven't actually worked with one at all. And then we also have a Bachmann Dewitt Clinton. I've also worked on one of these before, but haven't actually owned one. And lastly, this is a set that I probably won't be keeping around very much, because I don't really have a need for it. It's a Thomas set. So I'll move some of these sets out of the way, and then we can go through the last 4 little boxes over here. And these have some pretty interesting things in them, too. Alright, these are the final 4 boxes. Just of note, there's some more lifelike power lock track here. And I'll start with this Swiss box right here, which has another thing to go along with the Thomas. It's got a Percy in it. There's some more Easy Track in here. Then we have a Tyco Southern lumber car. I've had a whole bunch of those before. We've got, I think this is an old Manawa car of some sort. An old Manawa Union Pacific caboose. A very worn out Tyco Santa Fe car. A Santa Fe crane car, also by Tyco. And then we've got one of these Western Maryland coil cars with some coils. Next up, we've got this little box here, which does not have very much in it, but what it does have is quite interesting. So I'll set it right here. This looks to be a blue boxcar missing most of its doors. This I actually looked at. This is a Tyco car of some sort. This seems like a really, really huge car. I have no clue what it is or what it was used for, and it's just odd. This is another Tyco 3-dome, massive 6-axle tank car. I've got a Coca-Cola one that's in a lot nicer shape. And it looks like we've got a whole bunch of various parts, pieces, couplers, all those sorts of things in here. And then we have a motor for the thing that I'm going to be pulling out next, which will be the first project engine in here. This is a Mantua Union Pacific 462. I've got another 462, however, mine's in very rough shape. So I want to see if I can get this one running, and then maybe use my other one for parts or something. Because this one does also have a little bit of some side gear problems over here, so I could end up using some parts off of the other one. And then in here, there's still just some more trucks and couplers and that sort of thing. Alright, I'll reposition once again, and we've got 2 last boxes to go through. In here, I believe we mostly have some buildings and whatnot. I don't actually know what exactly this contains. Looks like we've got whatever this is. It's got a water tower. I think it's got some lighting feature or something. Then we have a water tower, which does kind of look nice. It does seem like that'll need some work. Then we've got some, I believe this is something to do with logging or mining or something like that. I've seen these before, but I don't know what they're for. Then in here, it looks like we have a lot of bridge risers and just some bridge pieces, probably for an HO scale bridge set of some sort. So I'll throw all these back in here, and we can go through the final box, which has some other pretty interesting things in it. First of which I'll pull out is a Bachmann drill trolley, which is kind of interesting. I had one similar to this, although in much, much worse shape. We have this IHC steam log crane thing, which might actually fit on a log car, so I might end up working with that in the future. We have a Bachmann Jupiter. I've looked at this thing, and it is missing a drive shaft, so I've already ordered a drive shaft for it, and that's all I've looked at ahead of time. And I'll pull these 2 out at the same time. These are 2 IHC log cars. This is a Bachmann flat car with some sort of missile on it. This is a Union Pacific high cube boxcar. This is a Reading boxcar, not high cube. This is a Union Pacific ore car. I've got one similar to this, but mine has a load and is weighted. And then last up in here, we've got 2 cranes. The first up is this one older style Bachmann one, which I've had before, but I ended up giving mine to a friend, I believe. And then lastly, we've got this much newer Bachmann Santa Fe crane set. So I'm going to clean all this up, and we're going to separate everything out and go through all the engines and freight cars themselves in much more detail. Alright, now it's time to go over everything individually. I've gone through all of the big sets, boxes, all that, and I've just condensed it down into the actual rolling stock and engines themselves. So I'm just going to go through this, hopefully not take a ridiculous amount of time. First off, we have this lifelike Maine Potatoes car. This one's missing a coupler. And for a note, all of these cars look like they're pretty much brand new. None of these wheels I've noticed really have any wear at all on them, and a lot of this stuff just kind of looks like it's never been used. Next up is another lifelike car, a Georgia Railroad 2-bay hopper. Another lifelike reefer. This time it looks like it's an American refrigerator company, something like that. This kind of looks like a Union Pacific or a PFE car, but it doesn't actually say either. And I don't know if this is a real railroad or not. This is just a basic lifelike Union Pacific caboose. I've had a whole bunch of these and I've gotten rid of a whole bunch of them. This is a lifelike Union Pacific F40. I've also had a few of these. I currently still only have one, and depending on how well this thing ends up working, I might either restore this one and keep it, or get rid of the other one. But we'll see. One of them's going to stay, one of them's going to be gone. Next up, it's another lifelike caboose. This time, it's just a Santa Fe one. This is a lifelike Lehigh Valley boxcar. Again, nothing special. The doors on these things do open. This is another lifelike 2-bay, except this time it's actually got a coal load in it. I used to have a whole bunch of these when I was starting out in model railroading, and I don't really know what happened to them. This one is an L&N, which I don't think I have anything L&N, interestingly enough. This is the Western Pacific coil car, or not Western Pacific, Western Maryland coil car by Tyco. This is a really interesting looking C&W cattle car. It's a really weird paint scheme for them to have on a cattle car. I don't think it's something they would have had, but it is kind of interesting looking. This is the lifelike Santa Fe F7, and this one's kind of weird because it's got absolutely nothing on the front. I feel like it would have had a Santa Fe logo or something, but there was no decals, no anything in there. Plus, this thing also kind of looks brand new to me again. So, I don't know if this was just a misprint, or they didn't actually put the Santa Fe logo on the front, but the paint on this thing actually looks really nice. Alright, next up we have this Southern Pacific boxcar that's missing all but a door. It's an Athearn Blue Box car. I don't know what I'm going to do with this. I'll see if a friend maybe has parts and can use it themselves. This is one of the coaches to go with the Bachmann Thomas. This is a Tyco boom tender for a crane. I've actually got a few of these, so I don't know what I'll be doing with this one. This is the Lifelike auto rack that I showed earlier in the video, which, again, there's not much too special about it. I've had a few of these before, and I actually did get another one for free fairly recently, too. Alright, this is one of the Hogwarts Express cars. These, again, look like they either have not been used or have not been used very much. The other one is a little bit dirtier than this, and I'll pull that one out in a second. This side of it's pretty clean, and on this end of the car, it might just need a little bit of a cleanup. I think they were just kind of exposed in a garage or something. Then we've got the Bachmann Thomas, which, again, I'm pretty sure is brand new. This coupler seems a little bit off on it, though. Right in here, we have the first Hogwarts Express engine. One of these, I believe, yeah, it's this one. This side gear here is broken, which I think is why there were two of them in the thing, because one of these is broken, which might be something for me to fix later on. Here's the tender that goes with that one. Here is the Hogwarts Express engine that I do not believe is broken, so hopefully I can have this thing working to pull those cars. And we are getting close to the bottom of this bin now. Now we have another Lifelike tank car. I believe this came with the Santa Fe set. This one's kind of interesting looking. I think I've had a few of these too, but again, nothing incredibly special to note. This is that Tyco lumber car that I showed you. I don't know how well it came across on video because I think that might have been off to the side, but again, not much special here. This is the Golf Mega Dome car. I might end up just taking one of the trucks and the center dome off so I can get my other car fixed and actually look really nice, because I would like to use that a lot more and have it look actually complete. This is another coach to go with the Thomas. This is a car I really had no clue what it was, and I still don't know why it's so huge, but this is a Starkist ATSF car. It's a Tyco. I didn't even know they made a car like this. I've never seen one of these before, or even a model of anything this huge before. I've seen some of the 89-foot cars, but I don't believe this is one of those. It's like, I want to say 60 feet or something like that. It's really weird. Then we've got the Tyco Santa Fe car. I don't know if I'll keep this thing because I don't really have any other cars to go with it. Then we've got the Mantua Union Pacific caboose. Then there's these little Chevys that came with the one auto rack. They're kind of cool. I've got a few of these, and they're actually realistic-ish cars, so we'll see if I put them on my layout at some point or something when I actually build that. Alright, the last piece of rolling stock in here, we have this Mantua Reefer. It's got a metal base, which is kind of interesting. I don't know if I have any use for this or anything, but it is a little bit neat. And last up, we've got two more engines. The first up is the Percy to go with the Thomas. I don't think I'm going to be keeping either of these, but they're kind of interesting, and maybe they'll just appear in this one video, or I'll give them to a friend or something. We'll see, because I don't really have any need for those. And then last off is the one engine that I think might actually be the project out of this whole box, which is this Mantua 462, which, again, this thing is actually a dummy. The motor from it was actually pulled out from that other bin that it came in, and I think this thing might just need some basic work. The biggest issue with this thing is this little pin right here missing, so this side gear might need some work. I might be able to take some parts off of my other Mantua 462 just to get this one running and part that other one out, but we'll see. So, I'll get this cleaned up a little bit, and we will go on to the other box. Alright, next up we had everything that was in the Bachmann boxes themselves, not the whole train sets, but the little individual boxes that I showed you earlier on. First up, we have this Union Pacific ore car. I actually have a train of these ore cars of about 4 of them so far. All of mine actually have some sort of load and are weighted and I've done a whole bunch of work to. And I believe this one's also going to need the same amount of work. All of these cars are also going to need new couplers because they don't have these sprung Bachmann Easy Mates. They have the other like plasticky spring ones. So I'll probably just be putting Katie's on all of these of note because none of these cars at all have Katie's or any of these sprung couplings. So that'll be something that I do. All right, next up will be one of the engines in here that I talked about briefly, which is the Bachmann Jupiter. This thing, when we test everything out, I will still try to run, but I don't believe this thing's ever been run. It's missing the drive shaft, which I've actually gone online and I ordered one from Bachmann that is already shipped and should be on the way in the next few days. So if this thing does turn over, it should be able to run. And I don't think this thing's ever been run because the original foam is still protecting the pilot truck, so I think that's a pretty good indication that it's never been used, so we'll just have to see if that thing works, and once I get a new drive shaft in, maybe it'll be a good one to use. Next up, we have this IHC crane thing. I don't know what this is going to go on, but I've got it. It's kind of cool, and it would be really useful to use with my logging train when I get that finished. Next up, we have the Bachmann Redding Beeline car. This one's in a little bit worse shape than I was expecting. This one rail up here is kind of bent. I think what this car is really going to need is just some Katie's, and it will also need a dull coat because I don't know if it's coming across really well, but this car is far too shiny. I had some Bachmann 40-foots like these from the Silver Series, and I actually really like those. So I'm going to kind of hope that this is going to be along the same lines once I dull coat it, and I won't have any problems, but we'll see. Alright, next up, we've got some more IHC cars. I'm just going to show both of them at the same time. They are both of these log cars. They're going to need plenty of work because I would like them to have Katie's and metal wheels, and they've currently got plastic wheels and horn hooks and these pins. So I want to replace the couplers, I want to replace the axles, and I want to replace these pins with screws, and it's the exact same on both cars. I do really like these log loads though. I think they look really good, and once upgraded, they'd look good on my train. Alright, next up we have the Bachmann High Cube. This thing's actually pretty nice. I don't think it's much different than the old Lionel one that I have, so I could stick this with my Rock Island one and throw it on a consist, which would be kind of nice so I don't just have one odd high cube anymore, which hopefully will make trains look quite a bit better. Alright, next up we've got the first of the two crane sets. This is the Bachmann one I showed earlier. This one does not have metal wheels or anything, unlike the other one, but this one does appear that it has been upgraded to the Easy Mate couplers. Same with the crane. I used to have this exact same style of crane with a different tender, but I gave that to a friend quite some time ago. Next up, we have the other crane. It is the exact same style, except it's got a little bit more modern paint on it, and it just looks a little bit nicer. And it's got metal wheels and all that stuff too, so I can actually use it at the club I'm part of. Next up is a real oddball. This is a Bachmann like low center flat car with some sort of missile on it. I don't know why this thing exists or what its purpose is or if this was even remotely close to anything real, but it's just kind of a funny piece of equipment. So I don't know what I'll do with it. It might be a little fun thing to mess around with, or I might just get rid of it. And lastly, we have the other engine out of this box. This is the Bachmann Main Street streetcar, which I think this one has also never been used because there was some original foam in the packaging. The gears on this thing don't feel split, so it should run perfectly fine, but we're going to find out relatively soon. And I just kind of want to see if this thing will work. It'll be the nicest of the trolleys that I own, and maybe I can get rid of a few more Tyco trolleys once I get this thing good. And with that out of the way, I've just got the classic Bachmann steam locomotives to go through. So I'll clean this all up, and we'll go through those pretty quickly. Alright, lastly we have the vintage Bachmann engines to go over based off the vintage steam locomotives. First of which, I'll pull out the cars for it. I actually have one of these, and it's in much worse shape, but this is one of the newer styles of the Bachmann John Bull, which in this one, all the gears feel like they should be good, so this thing should have enough power to move all of these. The wheels on this one are actually in line, unlike my other consist. And overall, this thing looks pretty nice, so I'm going to hope that it runs just as nice as it actually looks. So I'm going to move this out of the way, and then I'll grab the next one. Which is the Deutz-Kleinen. It's also the same story. I think on some of the older ones, the actual front of it was connected to the rear to pick up more power, but that doesn't seem to be the case on this one, so it should be just a little bit more simple and have a little fewer things to go wrong. This one is a really nice looking thing too. All of these do look really nice, but I've heard not the greatest about their reliability and experience not the greatest with it. And then last up is an engine that I've got absolutely no experience with. I don't even know much about its backstory or anything, but this is a Lafayette. And I will say, these cars, I think, out of all of them, they do really look the nicest. The interiors look really nice. I think these cars might have been in real life open-air cars, which would explain why they look like this. But I think they're just really nice looking. I'm going to hope that this thing runs well because it only has this driver here powered. I'm going to hope that that doesn't actually end up breaking, because if it does at some point, this thing will be basically unusable. So let me clean this up a little bit, get just all the engines out, and then we will go test out every single engine. All right, we've got all 11 engines here to test. First of all, I'm doing these in no particular order, but we're going to start with the Bachmann Jupiter, simply because I know this one is not going to actually run, but I do want to see if the motor on this thing can turn over. Maybe we'll get a headlight, something like that. So I'll give this thing some power. So far, it seems like nothing. I don't know if any of you can see that, but when the motor is spinning, we do have the headlight on. And it does seem to be ramping up, so that does seem good. It sounds a little bit loud, but hopefully once I get a new drive shaft in this thing will be running. Next up is the trolley. I'll give this thing some power. It also seems a little bit noisy. And a little slow, but it does in fact run. So I think that's pretty good. I think it also has lighting on both ends too, which is kind of nice. So, on to the next engine. Next up is the Thomas. I'll give this thing some power, see if it works. It does, but that sounds really rough. We'll see if it runs in reverse. So this one seems to run, but not very well. Next up is the Percy. We'll give this one power. It seems to run pretty well backwards. And it is substantially louder going forwards. Next, we have the lifelike Union Pacific F40. And so far, it seems like nothing. Never mind. It's just kind of kicked to life a little bit. Try going the other way. Let's see if this thing can do a lap. Alright, that one might need a little bit of oil, but that one clearly runs. Next up is the lifelike Santa Fe F7. And I'll see if it does the same thing as the F40. Try the other way, maybe? Oh. I was going to say nothing, but it seems like we got a little bit of a light. I'll see if I can bring this thing back. Yeah, this one clearly needs some work, but it does definitely have signs of life. Alright, next up we have the first Hogwarts Express. I'm not expecting this thing to run because we've got two of them, and this one was the one that appeared to have some damage, and it's got some handrail damage too. Never mind, apparently it'll run backwards and forwards. It definitely seems like there's something wrong there, but this one does run, which surprises me, and it's actually really quiet too. So now let's move on to the identical one, which will hopefully have the exact same performance without any of that clicking. Alright, now the second Hogwarts Express engine, which I've got high hopes for this one. And that does sound pretty good. So this one does in fact run, and it does run really smoothly too. Now it's time to test all these little tiny old steamers, so we'll start with the Lafayette. That one actually seems to run really well and really quietly, which is really good. Because I've heard a lot of bad about some of these old-time Bachmann steamers that they don't like to run very well. Hopefully this will be the trend for the rest of these. Next up is the DeWitt Clinton. I'll give this thing some power. And that seems to run pretty well, again, just like the Lafayette. One of the wheels did seem kind of loose on this thing, and it's derailed. It looks like one of the wheels is, again, nope, it didn't pop out. Just hit a rough spot in the track, apparently. But yeah, one of these wheels did seem a little bit off, so I was concerned about it running, and it seems like it's perfectly fine. And the final engine to test out is the John Bull. Let's see if this thing runs better than my current one. That actually seems really quiet and reliable. So, that's it for testing out all the engines. So, it looks like most of these engines are pretty good right off the bat. A few of them might be projects for future restoration videos, but for the most part, I think I can just use these things and get rid of the few I don't want. So, thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this huge Echo scale lot of free trains.